Good evening and welcome to the Town of Rockland Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, August 29, 2022. Please stand and join us for a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be advised that this open meeting is being broadcast live and recorded for playback by WRPS at youtube.com/WRPS-Rockland. Please go to WRPSRockland.com for further information. First on the agenda, Doug, community announcements.
Thank you, Mike. I only have one announcement tonight, and that is just to remind voters that the town clerk is doing early voting all week. That's this week, Monday, August 29th to Friday, September 2nd, and that's from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. in the lower level of Town Hall. So again, early voting all this week. There will also be early voting on the general election day, not just the primary. That's all I have tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. Next on the agenda, minutes. Review and approval of minutes of August 9th, 2022. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion. I have a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay, next on the agenda, under new business, sewer update. I'm going to start everything off with just an update for the residents as far as the sewer is concerned. Our interim sewer superintendent, Dave Taylor, submitted a letter of resignation that I'll read into record at this time. Dear Sewer Commissioners, please accept this letter as notice of my resignation from the position of interim sewer superintendent, effective September 2nd, 2022. Working for the sewer department has given me the opportunity to work in a different and challenging public works field. I've enjoyed working with all my coworkers both in the field and at the facility. My decision to resign is based on the fact that the board views me as an adversary, rather than someone willing to work together to move the department forward. This has been very apparent by attending and viewing past meetings, both working sessions and monthly Board of Sewer Commissioner meetings. The Board of Sewer Commissioners is essentially trying to perform the superintendent's day-to-day duties rather than oversee and advise on process and procedures, marginalizing the role of the superintendent in the process. I wish the board luck on finding a superintendent that will fill that role. I will make every effort over the next 2 weeks to leave on the best of terms by completing/updating all existing projects and help the smooth transition. Sincerely, Dave Taylor, Rockland Highway Superintendent, interim sewer superintendent. So first, Dave, I'm gonna have you come up, but first I just want to thank you for stepping up and filling that role the multiple times that you have for the town. It's unfortunate that it came to this. It ended this way with our last sewer superintendent, and you know, this isn't the first apology I've had to give to one, and I doubt it'll be the last based on some of the information that's coming out. But we won't beleaguer this point any further, but I will have you come up if you could just kind of give us a quick update on some of the projects that are coming up in the town.
We have 6 engineering groups working on different facets of revamping the sewer department right now that I'm overseeing in my assistant Robin. I'll go right down the list that you guys have in front of you. Wright Pierce, so they did the CWMP study, which is the prerequisite for the design phase of the treatment plant. We also hired them on a time and materials or a consultant fee to help us with some small items, well, not small, but smaller items than that. One of those being the NIPD's PERNS compliance timeline. So they've helped us with that, set the bullet points and where the timelines and what we have to meet. They also helped us with the SSO compliance, which is sanitary sewer overflow. So we have to send out an alert if we have that issue. The town saved a tremendous amount of money because the town in Scott has an emergency management where it sends out emails, texts, and the phone calls. So that is all set up with a link with the help of the IT department in Scott. We were able to get that up with probably half the cost that most towns did. So that's all set. That was submitted to the EPA through Wright Pierce, and with the help of the town, all kind of working together on that issue there. AECOM was the company that we hired with the SSES study. So they did the study. This is the one that John Laughlin implemented back in 2020. I followed it through in 2020 when I came on, when John retired early, just to fill in. That was done over the early spring, February and March of that year. We followed it through. They quantified all the I&I in town, quantified it, and we have that, and that's our base on where we're going to go for I&I retrieval or remediation at that point. They've currently did a couple other projects after that. We did the Memorial Park School, Jefferson School, where those are being torn down because we felt there was some ongoing infiltration there. We paid them with some of the leftover funding that we have from the SSES study. We found we had close to 15,000 gallons per day hit down there, which is a tremendous amount of water coming in the old clay lines. And keep in mind the old schools and the old buildings in town, all the drains, all the sump pumps, you know, pre-1980s were all tied into sewer. So those are all being revamped, so we'll save a lot just by having the new hookup at the school. The new school has agreed to the decommissioning the lateral going from the school to our specs. There'll be a new manhole that will probably take out 90% of the infiltration. That's pretty much it with AECOM, what they've done for us. Weston and Sampson, they did the butternut injection rehab project for us. So what that was is it was a wet well where all the controls and all the mechanicals were down, probably 15, 20 feet into the ground. It's been an issue with I&I and then also having maintenance issues over there. We were able to pull together the funding from multiple sources, get that redone. All the mechanicals, the injectors are all up top now, and it's just used as a well. It's hooked up to the SCADA system that we have at the sewer treatment plant, and that's up and going, and Weston and Sampson just signed off on that. The town is taking it over. They have also doing the rate study that we have ongoing right now. It's about a third of the way done. We're waiting to get the rest of our GIS system updated for the street mapping, and then once we get that, they'll have access to that to help with the street mapping, and then ongoing projects be submitted to them, and they can figure out the rate study. There'll also be part of the rate study will be, you know, seeing what we have for capital projects such as the plant, rehab out in the system, the distribution system, or collection system, sorry. So it will all take that into account, our 10, 15, 20 years down the road on the rate study. They are also, were hired to do our I&I control plan. That's part of a DEP requirement. The town has never had that. The SSES study that was done by AECOM does not satisfy that prerequisite, so we have to start that. We thought we'd be proactive with the EPA, and they liked that we were proactive with that compliance issue with the DEP. They're also looking to come up with different scopes, whether it be flow monitoring. I know the commissioners were looking to do flow monitors out in the field, you know, buy them, but those flow monitors are between $10,000 and $15,000 a piece. We don't have the staff to actually monitor those, quantify the beginning, quantify in the end. So to do a service like that would be about $100,000, would actually be a savings as opposed to buying the flow monitors ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that would be phase one of I&I, and that would also establish us on getting data for more rehabilitation to the I&I remediation that we would pass on to the developers. Environmental partners, they were known as EPG. So they've set up our GIS system. So when I came on in 2020, we kind of had an archaic system going on with as-built street mapping. If you had to go out into the field, you had to go back to the shop, look at the street mapping on the board, pull the as-builts out of a folder. So what we did is we started the GIS. We knew it was going to be a requirement with the EPA coming down the road. We got all the mappings scanned to about 75% right now. So it's on a GIS system. So if you go out into the field, you can literally punch in the address, pulls out all the data, anything that's been on that property, and also has the street mapping. So that is proactive for us for EPA. That's 3 or 4 years out, I believe, and we're about 60 to 70% done there as far as that goes. And environmental partners also helping us on the IPP program assessment. So what IPP stands for is actually, it's our discharge at our larger commercial properties, whether it be like Wereguard, Battelle, Fox Rock, some of the R-Mark. So anybody that discharges into our system, we have to make sure they're compliant, do inspectional services. This is also outside grease traps, not indoor. Indoor grease traps are handled by the Board of Health. Outside, those would be like 1,000-gallon tanks and up for grease traps. Those inspectional services are done by us for a fraction of the cost. It's about $25, I believe, we charge for doing those inspectional services. I currently have been doing those between 5 and 7 in the morning before my regular hours, and it works out. But that is part of it. Also, dentist office are part of that, and also car washes, which we just found out. So we only have 1 car wash in town and 4 dentist office. So I'll touch base on that when I get to the IPP audit. So the management assessment grant, I'm going to just follow that up with EPG also, because that's down below on the IPP. We just put in for a management assessment grant. So it's upwards to $150,000, which you have to split it up between 2 municipalities. So we took drainage and we took sewer, and that grants up to $150,000 to finish our GIS system, which is a requirement by the EPA. So for a fraction of the cost, it was $4,000 per department. We'll find out where we are with that in January. So that would help finish up the GIS system, which can be expensive. I think we spent roughly $75,000 up to date. So if we got up to $150,000, that'd probably be enough to finish it and actually add some amendments to the system as well. Let's see. Hallam Engineering. So Hallam Engineering is working with us. They're the engineering firm that was hired or procured out. John Laughlin started that initial investment, followed up by myself, and then Keith followed through with the procurement process. The design, all the modifications and mechanicals for the digester boiler room was designed by them. Wilkinson Group is the number 6. They're the mechanical company. They're out of Rockland. They actually won the bid. They're actually doing the work on the digester boiler that we're overseeing right now. The digester boiler will be done by ARPA funds procured by the town. So that's in the process right now. You're also under Hallam. There's a design for additional gas piping as well. So having the digester boiler, we kind of knew there was going to be an issue with the gas piping because obviously it's old and not up to date. So Hallam is doing the engineering process on the additional gas piping, and we're hoping to put that under the ARPA funds. We did a small earmark of $200,000 to help us cover that. We were hoping that we would go down to a 2-inch diameter pipe, which was not going to be done. So we're over to a 3-inch. So the pricing on that's obviously going to be going up. So we're trying to work out an addendum to the original digester boiler from Hallam, so we can get all the gas piping out of the digester boiler room done now, and then we will procure out for the other 550 feet of 3-inch gas piping at that point. Couple projects down there. I know I touched base on the IPP audit. So the IPP audit was done. We actually passed with flying colors, which was good. It was about a 2-week process that Robin helped me with. Again, that is, on the grease traps, discharges, dentist office, car washes. So that is one facet of dealing with the EPA we did well with. So, and that's finished and complete. They'll send us out the paperwork that we met all the requirements of the audit this week or next week at the latest. The effluent meter, so that is another requirement from the EPA. That was actually an article that was repurposed from last year that was brought over this year to help with the effluent meter and any of the upgrades per EPA, NIPD's permit, or any upgrades at the plant, or even some small I&I issues. So that'll be coming. It says 6 to 8 weeks out now. It's about 3 to 4 weeks out. So the parts should be in next week, and we'll be compliant within a month or two with the EPA on the effluent meter. The sewer department's never had an effluent meter, so this will be the first one as a base. So replace the 2 rooftop units. I mean, Jen helped us with that. That's through Guardian. So that's going to be pushed off to next year because we didn't get a vote on that. It was brought up at one of the sewer commissioner meetings that it's about a $100,000 project, and the funding, more than half of that would be paid for. So we're hoping we could go back to that next year on the Guardian group. And that is, that would be a tremendous electrical savings for the town. So that's pretty much my update on everything that we go on. Obviously, there's stuff out in the field as far as road work. So if we're doing road work, we always work with John and Keith. So any of the sewer manholes that are old, we take out, we replace, we rehab them by a company. It's a DEP credit of $1,000 to $1,500. Take in mind that's per year, so it's not a lot, but if you do 50 manholes, it adds up. 50 manholes per year is what we've been averaging. So, and that's what we've had for our I&I submissions to the EPA and DEP for the last 3 years. So I think that's about it.
All right, anybody have any questions or comments for Dave in particular to what he just covered with us?
I just wanted to say, it sounds like you are extremely thorough with what you do, and that you juggle all these different engineering companies quite well. I mean, I would be driven batty with all of this information, keeping it straight, and I just want the public to know what an absolute value you are to the sewer. Plus, you're in charge of the highway department too, and they work hand in hand. So, and it sounds like you save taxpayers quite a bit of money with what you do.
Well, yeah,
right?
if you're
And
looking
bringing
at
things
what
in-house.
are you comparing that to, like what I've been paid, and then
No,
I don't know what you mean.
No.
We
Well,
try to
that
set.
too,
I
that too.
mean, obviously I'm a resident, and
Well,
obviously
yeah,
I'm a
you
taxpayer,
are.
so
Yeah,
I look at
I mean-
as everything as a taxpayer. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with the decisions that you've made in bringing things in-house rather than subbing them out. And,
right.
so, I mean, my question is, do you have any clue as to who's going to replace you, or what that process is? How do you unpack that?
I don't know. I'm not really privy to the meeting, the working sessions. I was invited to one. I do know from the agenda that I received today that they do. I think they're going to bring in a project manager, and I know they have interviews within a week or two as well. So. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it's not hiring somebody, but it's bringing in a project manager from the outside.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah. The last I heard, the last meeting that I attended was Veolia. Would be they're looking to hire a project manager from Veolia.
Okay. And do you know if that's in the budget for?
Well, there's $100,000 for the superintendent's salary. So.
Okay.
And everything else is a line item. So I'm not sure where they will get the money from, honestly.
Okay.
If
so,
it goes over that.
all right, so I would guess hiring from an outside company, it might surpass $100,000.
I would believe so. It depends on the contract and how many
Okay.
hours a week. I
Okay.
mean, obviously, if you have a project manager, from my past experience in the private sector, a project manager is making $200 to $250 an hour
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's a billable hour.
Okay. All right. Well, that's
Yeah.
good to know. Right.
If they did go that route and hire a project manager or an operating company, we have budgeted about $100,000 for that position. That would go on the burden. The burden would go on the taxpayers, I'd assume, through fees.
Again, I'm not sure where you would get the monies from. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got minimal amount of development in town right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, the design that Robin and I came up with on the fee matrix developmental fees would be over towards development, I&I fees just for I&I. And that seems to be the problem. In the past, we've operated at a negative budget, and last year was the first time we weren't in a negative budget. So at the end of the year. So
Well, I won't ask you to answer any questions for anything that you're not, if you're not privy to the information, you know, I won't put you in a position to speculate, but if that is the case where they're looking to hire somebody that's double their budget, you know, that's definitely a conversation to have. I'd be interested to hear from Chairman Hessian, who isn't really communicating with me at this time, but it'd be interesting to hear where he's planning on achieving those fees, that money from. So, Dave, thanks for your time.
Yeah, I thank you, and I thank Robin. She's been a pleasure to work with down at the sewer department. You know, I couldn't have done it without her. She obviously has a high threshold for pain, so I appreciate that.
So I will ask that you do kind of stick around in the room, because we are going to get an update from Attorney Clifford on the EPA.
Actually, one moment.
Sure.
Apologize, Dave. I just wanted to just take my opportunity to thank you. A true leader rises to the occasion, and you know, not only have you been an outstanding leader for the highway department, but when we have needed it, you've jumped to the occasion. And Lori was right. Your update demonstrates the command with which you have been overseeing these engineering groups, the scope of what we need. I'm disappointed for the town that the way things are going, but I certainly understand, and I want to thank you for rising to the occasion and for all the help that you have given, and for navigating the environment that you have, and I certainly hope that we can see new days, but at the same time we have been very fortunate to have someone with your command of the situation, and I just wanted to say thank you.
No, I appreciate it. Again, I couldn't do it without my assistant Robin, so she actually helps me tremendously each day, so I'll put that out there. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Robin, of course.
Thanks, Dave. All right, Attorney Clifford. Obviously, I think anybody that's been paying attention knows that we are under administrative order from the EPA as pertains to the permitting at the sewer plant. And we have obviously some deadlines that we need to hit. And I thought maybe this might be an opportunity for you to speak to where we are in that process and then what we got coming forward to us at this time.
So the town has been meeting internally going back as far as April. We had our first meeting with the EPA May 5th. The EPA is basically very concerned because they issued an order back in 2007 that had a number of conditions for upgrading, improving, maintaining our sewer system, and it appears that over the course of that period of time, very little was done to comply with the EPA's order. So on July 14th, they issued an enforcement order, a notice of violation and an enforcement order. The terms of that order included a lot of specific actions required of the town and deadlines for those actions. While the EPA dictated to a large degree what had to be done, they were very cooperative in allowing us to set reasonable deadlines for when we could get these things done. From the beginning, the EPA determined that all communication would go through their enforcement council and through to our office, just to make sure that we had consistent point of communication and everybody was getting the correct information. It's important to understand that this order is against the town. And while there's been a lot of communication from different individuals directly to the EPA really doesn't want to get involved with kind of the internal machinations of how town government works in Rockland. The town is responsible. They've notified this office through Mr. Lapp. We're the ones who are accountable for compliance. We've moved into a situation where we are facing potentially serious ramifications in terms of fines for non-compliance. And I think where the EPA right now is they're waiting to see if we can meet the commitments we've made. So even though the order was issued on July 14th, the first deadline was August 1st. And candidly, that was a layup for us. It was something that we were supposed to be working on for many months before that. It was really just to submit a plan, not really detailed, how are we going to start dealing with the first phase of I&I removal. And on Friday, July 29th, about 4 o'clock, I get an email from the EPA saying they had received communication from Mr. Hessian that we were not going to hit that deadline, which was Monday. That was obviously of significant concern. Between Dave Taylor and Doug Lapp and I, we got together and we put together the plan, and we submitted the plan on time on August 1st. And I think it would have sent a really bad message to the EPA had we not done that. And it was alarming for me to receive that on a Friday afternoon when we received no communication from the commissioners that they had concerns about meeting that deadline. They went directly to the EPA and essentially said, we're not going to meet the deadline.
Now, nothing changed, though, from the point that we met with, where we reviewed the draft order and the commissioners signed off on every part of the draft order, right? Nothing changed from that point, right? So there wasn't any new surprises added to the administrative order?
No.
Okay, so everything that the commissioners negotiated with us in the room that we supported them on was in the document for that August 1st deadline?
That's correct.
Okay.
Part of the commitment in our submission to the EPA included a new formula that if we were going to tie in users to our sewer system, mainly commercial projects, we would get funding from them and they would contribute funds to help us deal with our I&I problem. It's not a radical proposition. Towns do this all the time. One of the projects that was out there, it had been approved in the past. Dave had communications with them about the new formula. The formula was submitted by the commissioners as part of the package we sent into the EPA. So the formula's been out there for a period of months. The new project, they agreed to the higher fees, but then at a meeting last week, the sewer commissioners basically said they weren't going to charge the higher fees and conceded what appears to be over $100,000 in contribution that we should be getting from this project.
But that's part of the EPA, like that was submitted to the EPA as part of the plan in order to tackle the I&I.
Watching the meeting, Mr. Hessian's rationale was that the new fee structure had never been voted by the sewer commission. Well, it's been in the sewer commission's hands for months. If it hasn't been voted, then they should vote it, obviously. But the critical thing is that the developer agreed to the higher fees. Now, this is money that's going to be used to fix the I&I problem. If developers don't pay for it, we still have to do it. That just means ratepayers are going to pay or taxpayers are going to pay.
And that's $100,000?
Yeah, I think it was $130,000 that we basically conceded that we wouldn't collect from a developer.
So $130,000 there, potentially $200,000 for a management company to run the plant. Okay, just keeping track.
Candidly, and you heard all the work that Dave Taylor's been doing. When we almost blew the very first deadline in August, we and the board called for a working group to get together, and that group really started meeting in earnest a couple of weeks ago. If Dave is there, as I understand it, the commissioners elected not to participate.
You wouldn't take my phone calls now.
But when Dave leaves at the end of this week, it is concerning, I'd say alarming, that we're not going to be able to comply, because there will not be one person who is really responsible, accountable for coordinating all of the things that we're supposed to do. And again, we are looking right down the barrel at serious fines. And again, we can make the distinction who pays the fines, ratepayers, taxpayers. I think in all of our minds, they're the same people. Somebody's going to pay them. So instead of spending money to fix the problem with our sewer system, now we're looking at the proposition of paying fines, which is not a productive use of those dollars.
What are EPA fines typically, Ron?
Oh, I'm sorry, what was that?
What's the typical monetary value of EPA
I mean,
fine?
you know, I've seen fines, we researched it, there's, you know, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I mean, I think the EPA just really wants to see that we're organized, we're committed to doing the things we said we're going to do. But I don't think that's their first option, but
So what was the reason for having to raise the rates for Primrose?
it's really because we committed to a new formula that was based on
Yeah.
every gallon of sewer that would be used by the new project, they would
Right.
have to contribute to, I think it was 13-1, 11-1.
11-1,
So
right?
they would contribute basically to take care of their new flow plus a proportional amount of the old I&I problems that we had. It's a fair and reasonable formula, and again, the commissioners actually put it forward to the EPA.
Plus, I would guess the price of things had gone up since the original formula was agreed upon.
So,
Yeah.
excuse me, does that mean the new formula is now null and void? Because that formula wasn't voted on per the commissioners? Or now that it has been still presented to the EPA, I'm wondering what supersedes, you know, in terms of moving forward. Is that new formula, because clearly it seems that we would need that additional funds. And at the same time, it seems that that's what the EPA is looking for from us. Is that correct?
The commissioners could vote the formula at their next meeting. There's no reason why they couldn't. In the project that we're talking about, those people have already agreed to the higher amounts. So there's no legal impediment to doing that, to going forward with it. And when we committed to the EPA as part of the overall negotiations for the order, when we committed to them that we would have this new formula which would generate revenue to help pay for these problems, if we don't do that, at a minimum, we're sending a bad signal. But this is really the first new project, the first major project that's come forward in some time. So, you know, I think there's still an opportunity to do it. It's puzzling why we didn't.
And then may I just ask Attorney Clifford, and I'm not sure how this would happen, but what would the protocol be for the sewer commissioners to vote for this or for new? Is it just putting an agenda item on there? Okay.
They've had it for some time. You put it as an agenda item and vote it.
And then as the select board, is that something that we could either recommend or request? Or I'm just curious how that could work in terms of the areas.
So we're in a tough spot. So our charter, which is definitely outdated, but our charter gives all authority to the drainage committee, sewer commissioners, all matters sewer. So we can ask. You know, it's funny. You know, and I've talked about this before. I met with a group last year, the concerned citizens, and every one of them was pushing me to get involved in matters of the sewer, in matters of water department, in issues that they have, whatever, across the town. And my answer was that it's up to the sewer commissioners. It's up to the water commissioners. And the pushback from them was, well, you're the selectman, and, you know, in matters of, you know, emergencies that, and we're identifying this as emergency, it's up to the Board of Selectmen to jump in there. So now we're in a position where we're trying to jump in at the request of the chairman of the sewer commission, who's been asking us for help for years, and now he's strong-arming us in the sense of saying that, you know, he'll only accept the help from us that he wants, not anything else. You know, as a resident, Tiffany, by all means, I mean, you know, that's what they forget, that we're also residents, and that that I'm a resident. I'm really concerned at the fact that we've already discussed $330,000, possibly another $300,000 to $400,000 in fines. So we're already discussing, almost $750,000 being added to the residents, even though there's already a rate review study going on for the sewer. But that $600,000, $700,000 isn't included in part of that. So what are our fees going to go up to as a resident? And Lori, you and I talk about this all the time. People want to know where their tax money is being spent. They see all the time that my taxes have gone up. What did I get for it?
Right.
Well, we're paying for stubbornness. We're paying for people that aren't willing to work and find the best solution for the town. They're looking for the best solution for them, or glory, I guess, at this point. I don't know, but I'm standing by what my promise was to that concerned citizens group, that we will tackle this. And if it's an EPA order that it's going against the town, well, that money comes out of the town. And I'm not going to let us get fined at that point. And I think that's what our position is.
And I also, none of these fines or none of these additional expenses are in any ways going towards the actual funds that are needed to
Fix the plan.
Correct.
to help us, move the sewer plant forward in the way that we need to. And I know
Right,
that
right.
when we both became involved, it was one of my priorities, because at the time and still the condition, or at least the needs of the sewer were a prominent discourse in all of our in all town discussions. But now it seems like we have a burgeoning, I'm going to say, emergency, or at least tonight's meeting has to at least address how do we avoid an impending crisis, because
Right.
we have to figure out how to fix
Yeah,
that.
I mean, it certainly seems like these extra fees between 600 and $1 million, we'll say,
Mhm.
are completely unnecessary. And plus, there's the legal fees,
Oh, yeah.
right?
So we'll
And-
say $1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll go to $1 million.
Right, and would you agree, Attorney Clifford, that none of this is really necessary legal discourse?
I mean, candidly, over the last probably 2 years, we've been a lot more involved in things that really are much more day-to-day operational issues.
Yeah,
It would be appropriate for my office to be involved when we get into negotiations with the EPA, but candidly, there's a lot, personnel, procurement, open meeting law issues that really, I don't think it's a good use of the town's legal dollars, candidly. So there's been far too much of that. I'm a little bit concerned that the commissioners are going out and looking at hiring an engineering firm to, I guess presumably for compliance with this EPA order. I don't know that that is consistent with procurement law, and it's certainly not legal if we don't have the budgeted funds to pay for it. I mean, one of the great things about Mr. Taylor, he was a bargain, candidly,
Yep.
for the work he was doing, for the amount we were paying.
So has, Attorney Galvin, we have you here as well, has the Board of Sewer Commissioners reached out to either of you in regards to the potential hiring of an outside firm to,
Has not reached out to me, no.
John?
No.
So they could end up negotiating, getting into a contract without going through the proper channels in this matter.
That's correct.
plus, I believe the town has some candidates for a sewer superintendent right now that they're going to interview. Is that?
The commissioners have candidates that they're going to interview.
Yeah.
Right.
So okay. So they're gonna hire both a new sewer superintendent and an outside firm to oversee the EPA order?
You know,
I don't know.
Can I?
It's gonna-
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely, Doug, yeah.
um,
Yeah,
Please do.
And I want to also start by thanking Dave for all the work he's done over the last couple of years. We greatly appreciate it. I'm very concerned about this interim period. I mean, the last superintendent, Keith, left, I think it was in like November, prior November, so it's been a long time that we've gone without filling that position, that the sewer commissioners have gone without filling it. Even if they're successful in their upcoming interviews, I imagine it's going to be a matter of weeks or months for that person to start if we're lucky. And I'm just really concerned both about compliance with the EPA order, and Dave went very, very quickly over the tasks that he does. He very quickly mentioned getting up at 5 a.m. and doing grease trap inspections and things like that. I mean, I just don't know how that kind of work is going to get done, how a lot of the administrative, non-engineering administrative, higher level administrative work is going to get done. We're going to be working on the budget. I mean, there's a lot. So I will have to wait and see what the commissioner's plan is for that. But I am very concerned.
Yeah, I think I'm most concerned with just the communication, where that's kind of broken down. Like I said, they've asked us to work with them, but it feels as though all they want is us to rubber stamp anything that they come up with. And at the end of the day, I think what they're looking for is us to put a $50 million debt exclusion on the warrant, which honestly, the lack of transparency on their part and their unwillingness to talk with us, even to talk to us as residents, doesn't make me feel too confident in supporting something that I don't feel as though due diligence has been done on. I don't know how you feel about that, but it's a tough spot.
I agree that the communication could be a lot better. I'm the liaison for sewer, and I plan to go to their working group meetings. I think there's one Wednesday night. So I can probably ask them what they're up to and what's going on. So, but our working group. I mean, we reached out to Mr. Hessian, and he refused to participate. So that was a little disappointing, and I really wish you were here tonight to fill in some of the blanks.
He was invited. He was invited,
Yeah.
and he chose not to attend. So,
Okay.
John.
I have nothing else, but I share Doug's concern that without a qualified superintendent here managing it day to day, coordinating all these engineering firms, we're headed for a disaster. I really am
So-
convinced.
So I guess I'm at this point where, I don't know what the expectation for this board, what's expected from us, from the residents. I think it's to prevent the town from getting into a situation where, people's taxes go up unnecessarily, and to really, monitor this process. But you have the people in town that say, it's not our job, it's their job. I mean, do we leave them to their own devices and depend on a track record that has not been a strong track record, has not been a proven track record to this point? Do we put our faith in the fact that they're going to be able to get this thing together when they almost missed the very first deadline on just the fact that they couldn't ask the question of what was actually needed, even though they negotiated the terms of what would be needed for that first deadline? They negotiated the terms in this room with us and with Chris Kenny. You might have been there too, or maybe Bob, one of you guys. They negotiated the terms and set the deadlines based on the draft order from the EPA. And then you almost missed a deadline because you didn't know what was supposed to be due on the first day that you set the terms for what you wanted to turn in on the first day. It's like assigning yourself homework and then not understanding what homework you assigned yourself. And do we just sit back and let it go as a town? I
Well, the
mean,
next deadline's September 1st, and Dave, are we all set for that?
Yeah, Wright
Can we
Pierce,
do-
had a meeting with Wright Pierce last week as well as the board afternoon. They gave us the paperwork to submit.
Yeah.
I submitted that to the EPA.
So
we're
September
good
1st
for
already.
September 1st.
Yeah, so we're ahead of schedule.
Well, yeah, if
Yeah.
there's a tweak and then we'll have it back in time, so it still meets the
And then
Okay.
what's the following one?
November 1st, which
And
is
that-
really good.
it's a big one, right? Yeah.
I see one September 30th too. Oh, that, Oh, that's 2025, never mind. Sorry. Yeah, November 1st.
So, I mean, it's.
Can I speak
yeah,
to your point, Mike?
yeah.
I mean, your question is a good one, and, you know, Jen and I have been racking our brains thinking about how we can best help, and I think I'm particularly frustrated about, at a prior meeting, you, the board, and we collectively talked about forming this working group that Lori mentioned. Again, not trying to usurp anyone's authority. The sewer commissioners have their authority under the charter to make the decisions. But as John noted, ultimately it's the town that's responsible. The EPA order is sent to me, not to anyone else. So the working group was a great idea, and it was a way to help us work together to try to make sure everybody's on the same page and we submit what we need to submit to stay in compliance and work together as a team for the benefit of the town. I mean, it seemed so obvious. And so given that that apparently has been rebuffed, I just don't really know where we go from here, because that to me was, I've never turned down help if it was offered in a constructive manner, and I can't imagine why anyone would. So I don't really know where we go from here.
I just feel like, you know, if we don't do anything, if we just, you know, sit on our hands on this, then we're turning our backs on the residents, and we were elected to assist the residents.
Agreed.
Right? I
That's
mean,
our role.
That's our
Yeah.
job, whether it's in the charter or not. You know, I'm not, look at, I think I've said it probably 3 or 4 different meetings. I have no intention of going down there and, you know, running the sewer department or telling the commissioners how to do their job, but
Right.
communicate with us, and when we send you information that there's an expectation that something is due on this date, you have it back by this date in that manner, and then continue to follow the process. Talk to town council. If you don't know what you're doing, nobody's judging you unless, you know, but if you choose not to accept the help that's available, you know, I mean, that's just setting us up to fail. And I don't know, as a resident and as an elected official, I don't want to see the town fail and be embarrassed and be fined by the EPA, because, you know, what's going to happen is, you know, people forget, John, you pointed out in the very beginning, this is the second order. They gave an order in 2006, 2007, and that order was basically ignored. So I don't imagine the EPA has a lot of patience left for the town of Rockland as it pertains to this matter. So what's going to happen is they're going to come down, and it's not going to just be fines. It's going to be less realistic expectations in order to get compliant, and it's going to be a lot of money out of taxpayers' pockets in the short term, as opposed to being able to spread it out and budget it over many years, because they're going to demand that everything is done
Right away.
yesterday, as opposed to at the deadlines that we gave them. So it's really concerning. And you know what? The people that send emails to the EPA, the people that send, you know, that make comments on social media when a select person posts something about, you know, hiring a police chief, you know, this is our job. This is our job. We're not stepping on anybody's toes, but we're holding them accountable as residents, as elected officials. We're holding them accountable. And you know what? If they don't want to communicate, we'll turn up the heat, and I'll send them an email every single day. And at least that way, you know, we've done our jobs. So I don't know. Very frustrated with the situation.
Yep.
The fact that here we are, I mean, we can say that this is the third commissioner, but it's really the fourth commissioner, because this is 2 times for you, Dave. You know, this is the second time for you.
That is step down.
So, I don't know. I mean, people gloss over the fact that we had an investigation last year. Nobody wants to talk about that, where laws were broken and processes weren't being followed, and we put terms in place for the sewer chairman of the commissioners to meet with us and to, you know, present to us once a month, and that hasn't happened. And now that they're not taking phone calls, you know, I'm very concerned over the amount of information that's going back and forth that's not out in the public, and the fact that this EPA administrative order could completely fall apart in his hands alone. So, very concerned.
Yeah, and I was called by a resident that the minutes for many of the boards and commissions are not posted in a timely manner online, and I wanted to put it out there that that's like a really great thing to do, so people can go online and read about what's going on, so they can be engaged and ask questions. So
I can say one more thing, Mike. I think an important shift that needs to happen, this is just my own opinion, I suspect you'll likely agree, is the commissioners, especially the chairman, needs to understand really what his role is.
Yes.
Because if you read between the lines, or maybe even not so between the lines, just read the words from Dave Taylor's letter. The superintendents, be they interim or permanent, need to have the freedom and the support to do their jobs. And the elected officials are the policy makers. They set policy, they set direction, they make decisions at public meetings, but they're not running the day-to-day operations. And they're right. And so and we've had discussions like this before, but I think that's a shift that needs to be made at that department to enable the successful person that they hire to be able to do their job effectively.
Well, I think it's an important thing too, because in all honesty, if Dave is the and I know you're leaving as of Friday, so hypothetically, if Dave is the point person on this project, on this EPA order, and everything's flowing from him to town council to the EPA, that's fine. But if Dave says, all right, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and then the commissioners say, no, we're going to handle this, right? Well, what are the repercussions if the commissioners don't handle what they say they're going to handle, right? They're elected every 3 years. The residents are going to find out that they're the ones that didn't follow up and do their job. They're just going to put it back and say, well, Dave wasn't ready in time to get the information to the EPA. So, it's the reason why a lot of our work goes through you and Jen and the rest of your team here at Town Hall. We have jobs out in the private sector and in the public sector, and we have other responsibilities, so we try to handle whatever residents' issues that come up that get sent to us, and then anything that you bring to us. But we're not here on the day-to-day basis. So if I say, Doug, I'm gonna handle the grant for McCarthy Farm, and I don't do it, and you said, Mike, well, what happened? You didn't get the grant. Oh yeah, I got busy at work. So what's the repercussions? If you don't do it, well, that was one of your goals and objectives. So there's accountability. There's not accountability for elected officials in that manner outside of being voted in or being voted out every 3 years when their election comes up. And it's just, it's important that the people that we hire and that we're paying to do the job are the ones that are responsible and the ones that are ultimately have the pressure of the accountability. And that's where, when you try to micromanage and you try to do the job yourself, you're taking that off of that person and you're making it so that all of a sudden, when the elected official doesn't follow through, you get a scapegoat. And in a lot of cases, a couple times now, since I've been on that board, the scapegoat sat in the front row and given their resignation to me. So that's a concern. It's a definite concern. So I don't know where we go from here. The Primrose discussion is concerning. That's about $138,000 of free money that you just said that is going to be sent back instead of having a developer, instead of having a business that's coming into the town pay this towards the EPA and clearing up I&I. The choice is rather to have the residents pay for that in some form. Instead of having Dave, who takes $1,000 stipend, $500 stipend most of the time, $500 stipend as sewer superintendent. Now we're going to pay $200,000 to $300,000 for a management company, plus hire a new superintendent at $100,000. Additional legal fees, plus potential fine from the EPA. So I guess, I'll leave it up to the residents of Rockland. Do you want to pay $1 million plus just, but not to have anything, not to have your life improve at all, to not improve services, but just because people are stubborn and they don't want to work together. So.
Well, and also, my question is, if we're looking to a new project manager to help oversee the EPA proponent, how much billable hours time is it going to take them just to ramp up on what's needed? And that's significant as well.
So I get.
I'll be putting together a sheet on it, and I just went over obviously where we're at, who the contacts are.
And that's because you're a resident, you're a taxpayer, and you care. It's not it shouldn't be your place, but I appreciate that you're gonna help out with the transition for whoever comes in, you know, but, I mean, I guess I'll leave it on the commissioners. I'll leave it on the commissioners to get in touch with us, but in the meantime, we're gonna do our thing from up here, and we're gonna follow along, and if we have to ask for information, I'd expect that they give the information to us in the same manner in which they give the information to any resident in town, so.
If
May
I
I-
can, can I just make one quick comment, Tiffany, before I forget it? Getting to your point, Mike, about you and us doing our jobs, I want to just remind all of us that the board, this board, the selectmen, has committed to the sewer commissioners over $1 million in ARPA funds. And that's significant, and that's a significant portion of our total available ARPA funding. And you've made sure to do that, and I don't want that to get ignored, because we have a lot of needs in the community. But in addition to everything else you said, which is true, we've also committed $1 million in ARPA funds toward
Good point.
the digester boiler and I&I.
That's a good point. So that's $1 million plus potential $1 million. That $1 million will give us something that's
Yes.
tangible. We'll see something out of that. So this is an additional $1 million. So, you know, potentially $2 million. You know, it's like they come to us and ask us for money, and that's it, and they don't want our opinion on anything else. So it's really frustrating, really frustrating. So I don't know, Tiffany, you had something to say?
Just one question. In the past, we've always spoken about what works within Rockland works well because of the synergy of the departments and the way that they're able to kind of integrate and work together. And they work together so well that they're able to be proactive and they're able to foresee needs, but at the same time, they work together because they communicate. There's been trust, and that's something that has helped us. And right now, without communication, you know, we don't have that. But what I'm curious about is where we were talking about our responsibility, and Attorney Clifford says, you know, we could see the writing on the wall that there very well could be a disaster, and so that as our board and with the administration, do we continue some sort of working group to at least be as proactive or ready, even if that doesn't? I'm
I think
just
we do.
curious.
I think
Yeah.
we do. I think we have to. I think, you know, whether or not they want to hear what our suggestions are, I think at least in order to track the deadlines
Yes.
and know exactly what's coming up, so that, you know, like I said, I don't care if Doug, if you want to send an email to the commissioners every single day, or, you know, send it to Robin, and Robin can put it in their mailbox every single day, put it on the conference room, you know, because that's the, you know, the best process to receive information, put it on the conference room table, and you can say, this is what's coming up, this is what's needed. We need it to the attorneys 2 weeks prior to the deadline, so that it can be reviewed by the attorneys, and so they can give it to the EPA. The EPA can review it and then get back to us if there's anything that needs to be changed before we miss a deadline. You know, and, you know, if they want to stonewall us, I mean, that's on them, and it's really sad if that's the case, because all we're trying to do is help them, help the town, and avoid having to pay $1 million worth of, you know, ridiculous fees and fines.
Plus.
You know, plus, you know, just because they don't want to work with us. I don't get it. I don't get it. So, I mean, we can move on. I'll end it with, you know, I said it to Chairman Hessian one of the last times I emailed him. Every single chair in this town calls me. They reach out to me just to kind of get on the same page, find out what the town's thoughts are on certain things. They reach out to me for procedural things, you know, what can be done and what can't be done. They reach out to me on how to run a meeting, or how to set an agenda, or certain things on the agendas. And sometimes they just reach out to me to vent, you know, and those are the longest conversations. But it's very frustrating that Chairman Hessian doesn't feel as though that line of communication is important enough for him to reach back out to me and actually at times take the advice and then just have a civil conversation. You know, most of our conversations end up with him yelling about whatever. I don't even know. But it's up to Chuck. It's up to Chairman Hessian at this point. If he wants to call me, I'm available, and we can get through this together. But It's our responsibility to the residents to continue to see this through. And it doesn't matter, I believe wholeheartedly in the charter, but, I think this is beyond the charter. The EPA wants to deal with town council, they want to deal with the town of Rockland, and I think that's where we go. And if I'm wrong, by all means, tell me, so.
Yeah. There's also the EPA is concerned about what we're putting out in our effluent discharge, like phosphorus and other organic materials that have consistently been over the limit. And one modern thing that regulates that is a tertiary system, which is about $500,000. Is that correct?
It's hard to say right now. You would have to have a contingency into that.
Okay. So, but that regulates and controls and keeps things within EPA acceptable limits for this discharge. And I hate to see spending $1 million on something that is totally unnecessary when we could spend it on that in addition to the $1 million we've already put into the ARPA funds that we've already put into the sewer system. So I don't know. And I'm putting together a spreadsheet of private industry people to contact for donations for our sewer, just to take the burden off residents. So, and that's, it takes a long time to get that compiled. You have to send out a whole lot of letters to get maybe just a 10%.
And the commissioners were mad at that as well, right?
I don't know that they were mad at that. They wanted to see the letter, and we're still putting it together because we're waiting for the governor to sign off on bonding so we can put actual figures down. This is what we are receiving, and this is the additional monies we need. But that's, I wanted to go to private industry, but also I would love to have a sit down with Senator Markey and see how any maybe Green New Deal funds that are coming down the pipe, but no pun intended, might might play into the formula for solving our sewer issues. So
Okay.
that's it.
All right, if nobody has anything else on this matter, I guess we can move on. Other new business not reasonably anticipated?
I have none.
Old business?
None.
Other old business not reasonably anticipated? Number 6, town administrator's report and correspondence.
I think I'm just going to pass on this, and I'll give you my regular
Next
update at our
week.
next meeting next week.
Selectmen's comments. Comments and opinions expressed by individual members do not necessarily reflect the views of the Board of Selectmen and the opinions and comments of only the individual member. Selectperson Childs.
Oh, I think we have said enough. I just wanted to, I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight, and I would suggest to put this meeting out publicly however we can to get the public more engaged with what's going on, because it's very concerning. So.
Selectperson Needham.
I also want to thank everybody for coming, and I think it's just important to remember that in order to move forward, we all have to rise above and to meet as one Rockland. And we need, I'd like to call to the sewer commissions and whatnot and say we need to communicate. Right. And it's not as a, this would be nice to happen, but in order for anything to happen, we have to. And so I think it's time for us to forget about whether it's a personality or power struggle or whatnot, but we need to rise above, and we need to call upon all of the powers that be to come together and figure out how to best move forward. And the one thing that I know for certain is that there are everybody who is involved is passionate about wanting the best for Rockland. And I think that that's the one thing we need to remember, and I think that communication is key.
Thank you, Tiffany. So I'll just reiterate, thank you, Dave, for all your work, and I don't know, who knows, maybe you'll be sewer superintendent again in another few months. We'll see. Also, just wish everybody well. First day of school is this Wednesday. Just remind everybody that kids will be out on the roads walking, buses will be out, and take it slow and look when people are during drop-off and during commuting hours for school. So, and wish all the students a great school year. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session, not to reconvene, per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, Craig Erickson versus Rockland Fire Department. Roll call vote.
Make a motion.
I have a motion.
Second.
A second. Roll call vote. Selectperson Childs.
Yes.
Selectperson Needham.
Yes.
And myself. It's unanimous. Thank you. Good night.